All right, we're going to do an evaluation on this red maple today. Obviously, it's a beautiful tree. It's sitting out here in the backyard, and it's got a lot of lawn, got full sun, and it's probably 25, 30 feet tall. Definitely not, I wouldn't call that a mature tree. Late stage adolescence, very full canopy, nice full leafy material there, showing the tree's making lots of energy, it's going to be strong health-wise. But structure and health are two different things. So this tree has a couple structural issues. First thing, always keep in mind, these maples are very susceptible to it, is these girdling roots. Now those roots will eventually kill this tree, another 10 to 15 years, and they can be pruned. You can do some root crown excavation and then take a look at those roots and see about pruning them. But you have to be very careful. Once the tree gets to this age, you could easily kill the tree by cutting too many of those roots at one time. And I generally will tell clients by the time the tree's this age, it's usually too late. But this is such a beautiful tree, it's going to be worth trying and seeing if we can do some pruning on those roots. And maybe we can. Maybe it's not too late for this one. Maybe, you know, a root can be pruned here and there, and over the next 2 years or something, we can get this thing to where it won't die from these roots. Now, if it does die from these roots, if these girdling roots eventually kill this tree, it's going to be 10, 15, or maybe even 20 years by the time the diameter growth on that root crown is hitting those roots so hard that it begins to choke off the life force, choke off the vascular flow of fluid, of water up into the canopy, up into these leaves. So that's one issue right there. That's kind of a major one, because sometimes you think of a situation like this, okay, if it's going to be too late for this tree and you're only going to think you might only have another 15 or 20 years for this tree max, then that might change the way you end up pruning a tree. But we're gonna prune this tree, assuming that it can be saved, assuming that those roots can be pruned properly. So let's take a look up into the canopy of this tree. One of the things to notice, you have like those three major stems coming out right there, like almost like a tridominant stem, and it's a little tough to see exactly what's going on there, but so we're going to go up there and subordinate one or two of those three leads and just let this one on the left kind of be the main central lead. But let's take a look at all these branches. It's really busy coming off this main stem. This is classic maple will do this. And obviously, you know, a small cut like this on the main trunk isn't going to hurt anything. Even a branch like this, whatever that is, you know, that could be removed. I normally don't like making live cuts on the main trunk under any circumstances, and certainly nothing over 4 inches. But in this situation, you're going to have a situation. Let's just take a look at these two branches right here. Each one of them is going to get wider and wider and wider. It's going to get bigger over the course of the next 10, 20, 30 years. And then eventually they're going to grow into each other, and they will stop the flow of water up through this area of the trunk. And you can eventually get enough of these areas. Let's take a look at these 1, 2, 3, 4 limbs here. As they all get wider and bigger, they will definitely choke off the tree's ability to move water up the trunk. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this one off, and just have this and this be the two branches in this area here. And probably this one's going to have to come off too. And it's a little busy out there anyhow, so it's not going to really affect the look of the tree. We're not going to be popping any big holes in the tree by taking these cuts off. And you know, this is the smaller of these 4 branches. These 2 are the smaller ones right here. Those 2 are the smaller ones, right? So, and that's probably 2.5, 3 inches, both of them, right? So not the worst thing in the world, but again, I've seen it many times in these maples. If you don't do that, these branches, again, they're all going to get wider every year, and eventually they'll just all grow into each other, and then all the fluid coming up this side of the trunk will be blocked, and the crown will start to die off above there. A lot of times you'll see that, you know. So then the tree has just a funny structure where it retards the growth and eventually dies the center of the tree, and the tree just has no individual leader. It has all these branches begin to vie for dominance, each one of them on their own. So what's going to happen here? Well, I'll show you after we're done, but we're certainly going to make a bunch of cuts here. These 2 are coming off. This one's coming off. That one's coming off. One of those 2 is going to come off up there, and then probably we'll leave this main one because that's just too big a cut to make on the main trunk. And then this guy here, I might not want to cut him either because that's at least 4 inches. But I might just severely reduce this guy to subordinate it. I might cut it back to this little guy right here. That might be the cut right there, and then the whole other half coming off. So, and then we'll probably do something to this on this big guy here, that big that's leading out. That almost wants to be a leader, so we'll probably have to take a little piece of the top of that off, maybe 4 or 5 feet, just a 2-inch cut off the top of that stem right there, and that will subordinate it to where it won't try to compete for dominance, and it'll let this tree develop into a nice central leader. All right, I hope you guys understand a lot of that. These are nice trees, and if you prune them now, and it should have been done 5-10 years ago, but if you prune them now, you can save a lot of trouble down the road. All right, we're taking a look at this newly pruned red maple here. There's all the branches we took out of it. Take a look at the size of these cuts. Now there's one or two significant cuts in there. It's kind of a big one. Those guys are 2 inches, solid 2 inches. There's 1.5 inches for you. A bunch of smaller 1.5 inch ones. But nothing too major. I think that's probably the biggest cut right there. Maybe 3 inches. And you can see the tree itself. There's kind of a hole in the bottom here. I left some of these other smaller lower branches. We're going to tie them into place there to cover that hole. And then if you look carefully, you really wouldn't notice it just to drive by. But if you know what the tree looked like before, there's a little hole there. There's a little hole up in the center of the tree up in there. And there's a little hole over here to the right. And so those are all holes were created from subordination pruning, which was done to try to correct that codominant stem situation right in there, if you can see it. The codominant stem situation there. Let's see where it is. Yeah, it's tough to see from the ground here, but that's where it is. Anyhow, so this is ugly. I'm well aware. It's a temporary measure. I wanted to remove one of these 2 branches. 1, 2, so close to each other, and pretty big branches. This one, whatever that is, that's a pretty big branch. So that one I had to stay. This one, I don't even want to cut this whole branch. I don't want to make that kind of cut on the main stem of this tree. I mean, eventually I will, but I'm going to give the tree time to prepare for that. So we subordinated the right side here, where it splits off on the right into that little tiny branch right there. And this left side has this branch going up here. So it's got it's got some green material on it, but hopefully the tree itself will slowly say, you know what, this isn't worth trying to keep these branches alive. I'm going to pull my energy out of the branch. I'm going to start setting up a chemical barrier. I'm going to start, developing a nice collar here of new wood on the trunk surrounding this limb as it slowly is either stunted or dies. And so that when we come back in 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, this collar will have developed nice and clear definition between where this collar is and where the branch is. We can make one clean cut there. The tree will have time to prepare chemically and energetically for that branch to be removed. And I feel a lot better about doing that in 2 stages than just coming in there and trying to make one target cut right on that branch right there and kind of shocking the tree, as it were, or having it to put those chemical defenses up in a hurry. So then there's a couple small cuts. Obviously that one. This is one of the 2 branches. I didn't want them too close together. I decided, well, which one is going to leave less of a hole in the tree? How does one look? What's it going to look like with one gone versus the other? For this branch here, the reason I took it off because we have this lower branch here. That branch there was nothing underneath it, so I said, okay, let that one be the one to stay, and this one will be the one to go. And as far as this branch goes, I'm trying to subordinate this too. I don't want to make a big cut on the trunk there if I don't have to, but probably eventually this branch will go, so I subordinate it by taking half of it off. It still has a good bit of green out there, and it's still reaching for the sun, and the tree will probably keep it on there for quite a while. Another 5 years, if I think the branch should be removed, I'll cut it back to here. And then another couple years after that, I'll make the final cut on the trunk of the tree. There's no hurry on that. And then here's another small one that's just a little 1-incher. It's not going to really matter to the tree to lose it. And then these 2 here, this is the best example I can give you of trying to create room so that these 4 branches don't eventually get so big that they create a dam and block the vascular tissue from moving water up into the top of the tree. And so those 2, I figured those 2 were the best to go. They're the smallest of the 4. And we're going to have this whole side of the trunk is open here to move water, and then between here and here, that should be open to move water, and there'll be some compartmentalization there, but it won't be enough to really stop the water flow. especially since we went out a little further. I didn't even try to make the perfect target cut. I went out just a little hair further than what it had to be. You can see that probably most guys would have tried to make that target cut like right there. But this I prefer to do this and let the tree then begin to put a new growth on around there. And if we want to cut it back a little bit of a finer pruning cut later, we can. And so then this branch here, again, this is kind of close. This one's kind of close to this. I would have liked to take that whole one off, but I'm like, let me not just do it in one step. So I took the main half of that off. That's a pretty big cut compared to this little tiny stem going out there. That's like, you know, 1/2 inch compared to like a 2.5 inch cut there. So that's going to subordinate this branch here. It's going to stunt the growth of this branch here, and eventually we can just cut that off as well in a later stage of pruning. And then I left all these lower branches here because I may want to tie them up into the holes here that were created. So this big hole here, we're going to use, and this is why I left some of these lower branches here, we're going to pull these guys into place right now. And we're going to just tie these guys right into the hole here. They're young, they're flexible. We can get them tied up and cover that hole a little bit. That's the plan right now. Your thoughts are always welcome in the comment section. All right, so we tied a couple branches up into the hole here. Those 2 branches there. Here's the rope right here, holding those 2 branches into place. And then this one here, 1 rope just going up and over, and it's tied off on that end right there. So that kind of hides the holes a little bit. I think the tree looks pretty good right now, and I'm sure the customer will be happy. And hopefully we've gotten a good way towards helping this tree develop a nice, healthy, long-term structure. All right, let's take a look at these girdling roots on this tree. They're all over the place. That's probably a bad planting practice. That one's pretty stiff right there. That's the closest one right now. I cut this one already, but we're gonna have to try cutting some others over here. That one's got to go there. Probably that one there, but I got to be careful not to cut too many. So that's the way it's going to be for now. Probably just those 3, and we'll revisit hopefully in another few years. All right, we decided to cut those guys that were right up. This was right around the trunk itself. That was close enough, and leave this guy for now since it's a good 6-8 inches away from the trunk of the tree. And then I cut this guy here and that guy there. And I'm just scared to cut this guy right now. I just don't want to kill the tree. So that guy's going to stay for now. Hopefully we bought the tree a bunch more years. Beautiful tree, red maple. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts.